thank you for coming along to the Financial Wellbeing Hub to listen to myself and Gethin talk about financial wellbeing as an employee benefit. It's something that we both feel quite passionately about. We're both actually from originally the world of employee benefits, so it's something I'm hoping we know a bit about. My name's Vivier. I'm here on behalf of Finwell today, but in real life I'm a reward and benefit specialist, so I do pay pensions, employee benefits and wellbeing for various clients in real life. And I'm really glad to be here today with Gethin Nadin, who is the Chief Innovation Officer from Benefex. Also, someone who I've known in the industry for many, many years, a real thought leader, a published author, no less. If you haven't read his books, I'm sure he'll point you in the right direction later. But Gethin really is known throughout my industry as being the person who has his finger on the pulse of what's about to happen next. And as a psychologist, he actually understands why we are doing things and why we should be doing them. So we're probably going to have a good old chat. We're hoping it's going to feel quite organic and not like I'm grilling him for 20 minutes or so. And then we'll open up the floor. And if you've got any questions on anything you'd like to ask us about financial wellbeing, it's linked to employee benefits, or anything just completely random, then please do ask. If I can ask Justine at the back, can you give me a wave when we've done 15 minutes, please? Thank you. So let's start. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to start off with the actual title of the presentation. So why should financial wellbeing be part of your employee benefits package? Gethin.
So financial well-being, if you think about what people struggle with when it comes to their lives, almost entirely at the top of the list is money. So if you kind of look at all the consumer data about what keeps people awake at night, what helps people to have divorces, arguments with their spouse, arguments with their children, it almost always features money. So money is this very kind of central cyclical point of all well-being. If you took every kind of pillar of well-being and put that in a Venn diagram, the overlapping point would be financial well-being. Very cyclical relationship, as you probably all know as well, with financial well-being and mental health. Those people who struggle with their mental health are more likely to fall into a difficult financial position. Those people with poor mental health, those people who struggle with money are also more likely to develop a mental health condition. So a very cyclical relationship. And so when we talk about workplace well-being, we are talking about financial well-being probably a little bit more loudly than those other pillars of well-being. And in a benefits context, if you think about most benefit schemes, we tend to be protecting people against the things that will affect their work, so their presence in the workplace. And again, we've got loads of evidence to suggest that when people are worried about money, they take time away from work, their presenteeism is higher. But we're also expecting them to make some pretty big financial decisions in the workplace, the most obvious being retirement or pensions. And so it kind of fits into the narrative of why you would offer employee benefits as to why you would support financial well-being in the workplace. I think with the schemes that we run, we've now probably done 2 million enrollments at Benefex across the last 10 years or so. Money is one of the number one reasons why people are choosing benefits, and most of the benefits our customers offer now, if they're not health related, they're financial related. So really, really big part of what the employer wants to do and also what the employee wants from their employment.
I think Gethin makes a really important point there. And I look at things from a very commercial side as well. I know we often, when we want to introduce things within our workplaces, we come across that whole, well, what's it going to do for us? So I've got a little bit of a question for you. So can I ask everyone just to stand up if you're able, please? I asked this question at an International Women's Day talk that I did last week, and I was quite shocked by the answer. There's no shame in the answer. Stay standing up if you can tell me to within the nearest £1,000 how much you currently have in your pension fund. Yeah. See, thank you. You can sit down now, and it's very good
I knew this question was coming.
Yeah, Gethin knew that question was coming. And the reason I ask that is because so often when we're trying to put in new benefits or we're trying to put in anything within our workplaces, we're kind of asked, why should we do that? And actually, employers spend a small fortune on pensions. Since auto-enrolment, it's at least, 5% or so of their spend. But employee benefits generally account for 20% of payroll spend. And the thing that costs the most, kind of at least 3/4, probably 7/8 of the room, isn't entirely cognizant of the benefit that brings to them. So financial well-being is really great. We need to stop thinking about financial well-being just being about debt and crisis and all of the bad things in the world. And what we need to do as part of a holistic employee benefits package is start thinking, actually, if I introduce financial well-being, how much more informed about the things that I do will my people become? So when you're putting that money into pension, and you will be as employers, and as individuals, you're putting money into your pensions at quite a healthy rate too. It's really important that people understand and value what they're doing and what you're doing for them. And it's not just pensions. It could be, who here has a shop? I'm not going to make you stand up again, don't worry. Who here has a shopping discounts portal within their employee benefits package? Yep. Who regularly, and I mean by regularly, at least once a week uses it? Yep. Different show of hands now. If I said to you, at the end of the year, I would give you between £500 and £2,000 tax-free, who would say no? Yeah, none of you. But actually, if your employees are well informed about their benefits and the financial aspects of their benefits, they're more likely to use them. If you just use your employee benefits shopping discounts portal in a moderate way throughout the year, you can easily achieve between £500 and £2,000 worth of cashback or discount or benefit without even particularly trying. Now, for most organisations, if you're on minimum wage, we're not asking you to spend any more. We're just asking you to spend a bit differently and you'll get the cash back or the discounts back. And if people are financially informed, if they're well informed about how their money works, what it's doing, where it's going, they're more likely to take notice of the other employee benefits that you offer them. And they're more likely to value them. We all know that it's a race to the top with money. I'd imagine a lot of your organisations are really struggling with the national insurance bills which are coming in, the increase to minimum wage, which I would never deny anyone because, living wage, we can't live on it. But actually, if you're looking for ways to return really good value for your employees, one of the best things you can do is make sure that they're financially informed. And I was talking to Gethin before this, and Gethin, talk to me what we explained to the crowd. What crowd? That was quite vague. Explain to the crowd our conversation that we had around financial well-being for the working well and why that's important.
Yeah, so if you take employee discount schemes, I think is a really good example. Very popular, massively underused in most organisations. If you look at across the UK at the moment, the average person has less than £500 in savings. If you look at data provided by Lloyds Bank a couple of years ago, most people have got less than 250. A huge portion of the UK workforce have got less than £100. That's across multiple industries and job roles, so it's not just people in kind of transient work or kind of unstable work, zero contracts. It's pretty broad across the spectrum. So most people do not have enough money in savings that we'd like them to have. And if you speak to any financial advisor, they'll tend to recommend you should have about 3 months worth of salary in savings, and that generally covers you against the kind of bumps and the unexpected things that life will happen. But most people are far, far away from where they need to be. But if you look at the magic figure, according to research by the London School of Economics, the magic figure we should be getting everyone to is £1,000 as a minimum. And that's the point at which your financial situation stops harming your overall well-being. So it's the point at which you can start to feel a little bit more confident that you have a safety blanket. So if the boiler breaks and that costs you 200 quid, if you get a leak and that's 300 quid, you can kind of take those knocks and that doesn't really affect your day-to-day well-being significantly. So that's the figure we should be getting everyone to. So I crunched the data through our discounts platform, which is currently used by about 1,000 companies around the world in multiple countries. If we crunch through the data, you can quite easily take people's existing spending and get them to save at least £500. So they wouldn't have to change retailer for most people. They wouldn't have to change how much they're spending. And that's the average spending for a family of four or a couple in the UK. So we could basically take people 50% of the way, at least on average, to creating that £1,000 in just the way that we advertise and talk about these products. And one of the great examples we had where we took a customer recently, a big defence customer in the UK. We doubled their usage of employee discounts. And really that was, we don't talk to people about the 5% I can get you off at Tesco. We talk about what that means in real terms. So you're able to go to somebody and effectively say, your bread for the first 6 months is free on us through this discount scheme. You take a kind of tangible spend that they have rather than just a percentage, because no one's getting out of bed for 5% at Tesco's. But if you look at an average spend, people are probably getting out of bed for £500 a year. So you start to kind of conceptualize it a little bit with how they're spending money. There was a company I worked with years ago where we had It was a startup that I helped kind of run, and we had a really good deal at the time, which was Littlewoods. I don't know if you remember the Littlewoods retailer, but they gave you £20 off a minimum spend of £20. So if you bought anything at Littlewoods, you'd get £20 off. So if you bought a pack of T-shirts for 25 quid, you'd only pay £5 for them. Nobody was interested. Nobody was interested in Littlewoods really as a retailer. It was failing. It wasn't long before it closed. And then we realised that the England shirt that was out at the time, which got a lot of press attention for being too expensive, was available at Littlewoods. So we advertised that as £20 off the England shirt, and we got thousands of sales. Same discount, but we just positioned it in a slightly different way. And so I think we have to think about, when we look at benefits in workplace, but also general financial well-being, we've got to think about the behaviour change. Like, what do people want to see from us? And again, we've done some work where, rather than looking at 5% off your groceries, we're showing you how actually that could equate to 2 weeks' worth of free groceries. And if you looked at research into kind of buy one, get one free or 50% deals, people tend to prefer the buy one, get one free deals because they feel like they're getting something for free, even though those two deals are actually exactly the same.
And Gethin makes a good point there. He's got a head full of numbers, which I could only aspire to remember. But having worked myself in the employee benefits space for a couple of decades, this is about habit forming. And I don't know if any of you have seen the advert on television at the moment for Barclays with the little children in. I don't have children, but my spirit child is the little child who says, I didn't have any calamari, so I'm not paying for the calamari. And it's really important that we develop good money habits. And that's why having financial well-being within your benefits package, because we don't like talking about money, do we? We're all very, all very kind of British and uptight, and we don't talk about money. And I think, particularly, we hear all the stories of women don't negotiate their salaries as much as men do. They need to meet some of the women I've met, because they do. But we hear all of these stories about how we behave around money. And it's really important to make sure that your employees, all of this money from a commercial angle, all of this money that you're spending on them, and actually you're not getting, and I hate the expression, you're not getting the bang for your buck that you thought you might be getting, because they simply don't understand. People don't understand income protection, they don't understand life assurance. Most people don't understand the importance and the financial prudence of making a will. And that's something probably most of you offer within your employee benefits packages, but people just don't think to do it. So I think our first point for everyone to take away is that all of the money that you're spending on your employee benefits packages, unless you include financial well-being, so that people can truly understand not just that individual benefit, but how it fits in with everything else that you do, is probably not money well spent. So people need to understand and be educated to get the very best out of their reward. Now, coming on to a more commercial angle, one of the other reasons why I think financial well-being is so important is the productivity of your employees. And we all see, obviously, don't we, there's always lots in the news about how many days off sick people have because, they're supposedly sick Britain and, people working from home aren't really working. Financial well-being has a massive impact on productivity. I personally find some of those news stories quite incredulous, the way they're written, but they're the kind of stories that your people are reading and they're the kind of stories that your leaders are reading. So, Gethin, tell us the stats on the link between financial well-being and productivity and how many days we're missing out on in the British economy. And there was another study this morning, so I don't expect you to know the numbers from this, but there was another study this morning talking about the 100 million days that people are missing from work because of financial worries.
And financial well-being in any country is now so vast and compelling, you can say with a high degree of confidence that if somebody's worried about money, they are not performing well at work. Heidi here, when she worked for Barclays, did one of the first workplace financial well-being studies ever in the world, called The Last Taboo of the Workplace. And it was really trying to push through this idea that is it the employer's responsibility to be talking to people about their money? And it was really kind of groundbreaking at the time, and it's something we're still talking about now is it the employer's responsibility to be having these conversations? I think well-being to an extent feels like an okay conversation for us to have because society's kind of changed, and we've got some great research out by the Royal Society of Public Health a couple of weeks ago saying that most Britons, about 83% of Britons, are happy to talk about their well-being with anybody. We still aren't there with financial well-being, and there's loads of research to say that we would rather talk about sex than money with anyone that we know. So do you want to talk about sex for a minute?
Later.
And
if that doesn't sound really wrong.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. And so, yeah, it's a really important part of the conversation we need to have in the workplace. And as I mentioned, if you look at most of the benefits and the relationship we have with work, why aren't we talking about money more? Because for most of our employees, it's where they get their income. And for most employees, that's their sole income is through their employer. But again, as I mentioned, we're always trying to have them some very kind of common financial decisions with them. We're asking them to invest in workplace ISAs. We're offering them wage advance products. We've been, for decades, offering them pensions. So they're already making financial decisions in the workplace alongside us as employers. So it's not a kind of huge leap to then be talking about people's financial relationships with money or relationship with money outside the workplace. So I think it fundamentally comes back every time in the research to it's affecting people's ability to do their job. And I think if you look at where benefits used to be, and there'll be a lot of people in the room who still think this way about kind of well-being generally, we think about it as risk mitigation. So if you offered health insurance, you did it because you wanted somebody to get seen quickly, get their leg fixed and back to work and be as productive as possible. We're not really in that space anymore. We're not trying to plug a hole in the boat, which is kind of these long-term sickness absence, which is part of obviously the big problem. But what we're trying to do is make the boat go faster. So we're starting to show how do we invest in our people in a way that they get better at their jobs so that we produce more, that we perform more. And I think if you start to think about financial well-being in that context and move it away from this risk mitigation, I think we start to get some ground. And where you can link that to performance and productivity, again, the research tells us time and time again, is that's where you'll get the board to pay attention to what you want to do. Because, I mean, we did some research years ago at King's College London on financial well-being, and we asked, I think it's just over 50 HR leaders, loads of questions about financial well-being. And one of those was, do you need to build a business case for financial well-being? And the overwhelming response was no, it was morally the right thing to do to help people with their money. And then we could never sell anything on somebody's moral imperative to do the right thing. It just wasn't happening. But the more we were able to show that if you can solve somebody's financial well-being issues, they sell more, they create better products, they deliver better customer service, they more creatively problem solve, you start to show how actually this creates the whole thing better. The workplace gets better because we invest in financial well-being. So across all those metrics of performance, regardless of what industry you're in, time and time again, we can see that investments in financial well-being, especially financial well-being benefits, are driving some of the outcomes we want to see, which is generally people have more control, more confidence, and more security in their financial situation.
Gethin makes some really good points there, and one of the things that always occurs to me that if it's not you, then it's who. If you're not talking to your employees about financial well-being and explaining things to them that they never have come across before, we don't have school financial education. It's coming in now, but it's kind of missed out many generations. You think of all of the stories you hear about influencers on TikTok, and the FCA have just launched a massive investigation into people who've been giving financial advice via TikTok. These are the kind of things that a lot of your employees will be listening to and seeing and understanding and believing to be gospel. And if it isn't you filling that gap with the financial well-being, and we're not talking about, people who are in crisis here, we're talking again about the working well and making sure that they remain productive. I think it's really important that as a trusted source of information for your employees, that financial well-being from employers does come from a really good space. Now, I have been warned that we've got 15 minutes left. So,
well, if I could just add to that point. So if you look at the research, the Edelman Trust Barometer measures trust in institutions in the lives of people all around the world. 72 to 73% of people say the employer is the most trusted institution in their lives. That stat's been pretty solid now for about 5 years, beaten only this year to second place, but still one of the most trusted institutions in the lives of employees. If you look at what happened during the pandemic, we had a lot of misinformation. We had a lot of people telling us what to do. Boris Johnson was kind of on Sunday nights telling us what the new rules were, and HR teams were clambering to interpret those into action for the following day. That actually led more employees to believe in what their employer says is a trusted truth. So during the pandemic, people believed what their employer said more than the NHS and more even than the World Health Organization. And so where we're at the moment with finances, to Jane's point, is if you just look at the UK, if you aren't helping your people with your finances, who is? The Money and Pension Service, Money Helper, it still exists, but has had its funding cut almost year on year for about 5 years. The Citizen Advice Bureau is really only keeping its head above water because people like Martin Lewis give it £1 million a year to stay afloat. So all these people that used to kind of support are just not there anymore. We used to rely on the state. The previous government for a decade and a half was very clear that we were too much of a welfare state and wanted to pull back some of that investment. And so, yeah, I think Jane's point is really valid, which is if you're not offering it, who else? And if we got all this data that says people are worrying about money and it's affecting the workplace, that's the calculation that gets us to action, I think, because we're able to demonstrate to the workplace that this is our problem to solve and it's not an overstep anymore. We should be getting involved in the finances of the people that work with us because ultimately we can demonstrate that our business gets better as a result of that.
And that's very true. And one thing I will say from personal experience, I've spent most of my reward career trying to prove the return on investment of doing something. And I think that when you look at financial well-being, you can actually turn it on its head and say, if I don't do this, what is the lack of productivity, of attendance, of innovation that I'm going to get from not doing this? So don't think of this as in, I need to save money, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Look at it as I'm already spending 20% of my payroll or more in some organisations on things for my employees that they don't understand. I'm not equipping them to make good decisions. I'm not helping them live their lives. I've probably got higher than average sickness in certain groups. We know that people are taking time off work when they're worrying about their money. So rather than building a business case built on the return of investment, let's start building one on, you've already spent this money, how can we actually get the most value from it?
And we've actually got some really good examples about how consumers do not make really good decisions for themselves, really simple decisions. So one of them is most people in the UK are overinsured when it comes to their home insurance or car insurance. So most people will pay for extras that they don't actually need. If you look at the number of people who switch bank accounts, most people don't switch bank accounts. How many people have been with the same bank for 5 years or more? So again, more than half the group. So yeah, I mean, this is the reason why you get really good student deal loans when you kind of go into banks, because if they get you when you're 20, they'll have you for life. If you look at some of the banks like HSBC and a few others over the last few months, they've been offering people £20 to switch, £200 to switch. So if we think about what we were saying about getting people to that magic £1,000, each one of you could now send an email to all your people, encouraging them to switch their current accounts, telling them in that email that the 7-day switch guarantee means they don't have to tell you everyone's payment details. It will transfer all of your friends' bank details across. They'll contact your employer and change bank details. You don't have to do any of that. Within 7 days, that's all done for you, and somebody's going to give you £200 because you've moved your salary into a different bank. And let's be honest, there's not much difference between the banks now. They're all pretty bad. But really, the app experience is the only thing. You know, you're not going to a branch and having great customer service anymore. So switching kind of fairly regularly, that puts £200. I mean, if you just advertise that, you don't need to speak to any provider in the room. You can go and do that yourself tomorrow. Same with credit scoring. ClearScore will give everyone a free credit report. You can go and remind everyone now to go and check their credit report. And you can tell them that there are universities in the US where they encourage students to check their credit scores. And a decade later, the average credit scores in that state go up because people have developed the habit of checking their credit scores regularly. Just checking people's bank. We were talking before about bank balances, about getting into the habit of checking your bank balance on a daily basis, even if you think you know what's going on. Because as soon as mobile banking was introduced into the UK, people's average overdrafts went down as they downloaded the banking app. So the more visibility people had over their financial situation, the better their financial situation got. And again, all of you can do that for free by just communicating to your people and encouraging them to do. And with the customers we've got, we've done that time and time again, and that's led to better outcomes for employees without you having to employ anyone in the room that's trying to sell you financial well-being. So there's some really kind of quick wins you can do to develop some of those habits. And if you look at some of the research around performance and productivity, if you got 10% of your people to feel a little bit more confident in their financial situation, you'll start to see that output increase in a positive way.
All very good points. So we've nearly run out of time. It has gone very quickly. Just a couple of bits that I want to make you aware of. Oh no, it'll be the down button instead. We're here today to talk about Financial Wellbeing Month, which will be the first Financial Wellbeing Month will be April 2025. There are a number of companies involved. If you want to go and have a look at the stand behind you, get more chocolate eggs. You can sign up to support Financial Wellbeing Month. You can either scan the code or you can go to financialwellbeingmonth.com. From the drop-down list, you can pick a name. My name's Jane, pick mine. We're having a small competition to see who gets the most Jane. And there you'll have access to loads of free resources, webinars, information, all stuff around helping your employees be more financially capable. We need to think about the working well employee, not just the crisis employee, the working well employee. and it's all absolutely free. And what we'd like to do is get as many companies signed up to support us, because this is the first time we've run Financial Wellbeing Month. It's a new invention. And it actually really will help you with your wellbeing programs. It's free resource, and it's all just waiting there for you. So please do sign up and have a look. If you've got any questions, then my colleagues are all on the stand behind you, or just drop us a note through the financialwellbeing.com website, and we will catch up with you all. But I'd like to open the floor to any questions or observations if anyone's got anything. Does anyone want to shout?
Do we have a roaming mic?
It's Justine then. There you go. And it's
for Gethin. Is that working? Yeah, it's working. Hi, Gethin. Right, my question. Okay, so people obviously find it really hard, don't they, to build business cases for these things. It costs money. So what are your top tips to assure people that they're going to get a return on investment if they do something here? Because, money is tight for businesses as well as for colleagues.
So we see this really generally at the moment that if you look at most metrics of kind of well-being generally and how we build business cases, we focus a lot on the people at risk. So a lot of people here today will talk about, if you take mental health, for example, the 1 in 4 people that will develop a serious mental health condition and the impact that will have on your kind of workplace. But I'm more interested in the 3 in 4, those people who are at risk of slipping. And when we think about financial well-being, the people who are in debt actually, in my opinion, get quite a lot of support. There's a lot of things that kick in at societal level to help and support those people. It's the people that are slipping, that are just getting to the end of the month without much breathing room. They're not keeping their heads above water or just keeping their heads above water. They're the people where it's materializing in things like presenteeism, because it's just stuff that's playing around in their head. It's affecting their sleep and it's worrying them. So if you start to think about that performance angle, I think that's where the secret sauce of an ROI is. One thing HR teams generally do, I spend a lot of time with HR teams, they're not very good at linking organizational success strategies with what we're trying to do in HR or well-being. And so if you think about, if you're a business that's trying to outdo your competitors, create more customer-centric behaviors, what you should be doing is looking at what is the strategy your business is trying to achieve for the next 3 to 5 years, and they don't tend to look much further than that. And then how do you, through an application of whatever it is you're trying to do with financial well-being, help the business to achieve those things? And I'm pretty sure you will find a lot of evidence to lead to whether that's productivity and innovation, as we've spoken about. But again, there's loads of evidence out there for kind of customer experience and how that improves when people's finances get better. So if you're able to start linking, if I do these 3 things that I want to do in a financial well-being perspective, this is how our business gets better. I think that's a far more compelling conversation than if we don't do something, our absence rate's going to go up. Because I think those metrics, you almost have to get somebody to imagine a future that doesn't currently exist. And I likened it the other day to trying to sell a house insurance policy to people in a street that have never had a burglary. If you're saying, if you don't do something now, it gets worse, that can be a really difficult thing. Businesses don't take over and say, right, let's do the right thing now for the next 10 years, because they don't think that long. They think 3 to 5 years. So if you're able to start saying, this is the business you want us to be, and this is how I can help you get there, I think that's a far more compelling return on investment.
And I think on a purely practical point of view as well, if you go back to your organisations, and whether it's you or somebody else, have a quick audit of the benefits that you currently offer. And the one thing that I'm going to tell you to look for is if you pay for a standalone EAP, have a look. If your income protection, life assurance, a pension scheme, quite often buried in the small print of those provider notes is they offer an EAP service. So you're effectively paying for something twice. So there is money probably within your benefits budget that you can free up to be able to get some of that back in as well. And I do a lot of benefit audits for clients. It's what I do in my time when I'm not talking about financial well-being. And that's the first thing I look for. And my record is I found a client who had 6 EAPs. They were physically paying for 2 and they got 4 for free. So immediately we had a massive saving. And that's where you can start finding some money that you can recycle into things which are going to make a real difference. I think we've got a question over here.
Okay, I haven't quite formulated the question, but it's basically, my concern is around ethics and the sort of two examples. The shopping discount schemes tend to push people to the big supermarkets. They almost disadvantage independent traders. And when you've talked about credit scoring, banks and savings, surely alongside that, there needs to be, information and warnings to protect people or to give people the tools to fight back against frauds or scams.
I would agree, and that's why the financial wellbeing is really important. This is about thinking about holistic EVPs. With regards to the supermarkets, I can completely understand your point. The shop local thing is quite important. People can make a choice on that level. For some organisations, that actually, is a consideration. For some, it isn't. The reason why I think financial wellbeing needs to be part of a core benefits package is so that when your employees do make those decisions around, I'm going to shop around for my life insurance, I'm going to shop around for my car insurance, that they are informed and they are educated as to what they should be looking for and what they're not. Because otherwise, you see compare the Meerkat adverts, go on and you'll get 25% off at Cafe Nero. So everyone's like, oh, I'll do that. But there's no education in that piece to say, and actually here are the choices you should be making about your insurance. It's sign up, get cheaper insurance, and get a Meerkat toy or 25% off at Nero. Whereas if you have financial wellbeing as a core part for your employee benefits package, you can safely encourage your employees to go and do those kind of things.
I think in this country, there's very clear lines between what is constituted as advice and education. And what we're talking about in this context is education. It's basically awareness building. So in your credit score example, when we've helped customers issue some of those comms I suggested earlier on, we've actually put multiple versions of what you can get for free, which is now nobody should be aiming for credit scoring. But also it's quite good practice to tell people to check multiple credit scores because different lenders use different credit score providers. So if you've got a couple of different credit scores from 2 or 3 providers, you probably get a broad view of what your credit score is, regardless of who the lender uses. And your point about people using the big supermarkets, it's a valid point, but I mean, we're not telling people to do stuff. We're making suggestions to try and get them. Lots of the customers we work with, and I'm sure lots of you in the room, have local discounts that you offer as well. So I think it's about balancing those. But I think generally speaking, if you look at the data, most people are not in the position or the luxury to decide they want to choose to buy local if that's going to save them a lot more money buying elsewhere. And let's be honest, it's the reason why we all still buy Amazon when we all know what kind of employer they are, because the next day delivery. I mean, I was in a local bookshop the other day and the book was £15 more than I could get on Amazon. £5 more, I'll support my local buyer, £10 more. But the reality is if people are trying to save money, they don't have the luxury of making too much choice over where they spend their money.
But I think that your question actually encapsulates why that financial wellbeing is important, because if we are going to have anything in our workplace, whether it's signing up for our pension or whether it's signing up for any of the benefits we offer, to make sure that people are properly educated is really important. What I should say is Gethin's books are available on Amazon, but also available through other good booksellers. Because he was too shy to say it himself. I've read them, they're actually very good. And I did that without being paid. Did you see?
Well, I sell them at cost price, so I wouldn't have given you any money anyway. But if anyone's heard anything interesting today, and I'll put something on LinkedIn, tag Financial Wellbeing Month and Finwell, I'll pick some of you out and send you some free copies of books as well. So at least you won't have to pay for that.
If there's no more questions, then we'll wrap up and you can go on your merry ways and ask any questions to anyone privately that you want. But thank you so much. Don't forget to sign up.